Humiliated and enraged, Olufunke decided that subtlety would no longer serve her purpose. She had tried to disgrace him. Now she would get rid of him for good. One evening, when Adeyemi's favorite dish was served, the queen saw her chance. While no one was looking, she slipped a vial of poison into his food. She then sat gracefully in the living room, waiting for fate to unfold. Adeyemi entered the dining room, stomach rumbling. He picked up his spoon, ready to eat. Just as he lifted the first bite to his lips, Iya Aduke burst into the room. With a swift movement, she knocked the spoon from his hand. The room fell silent. "What is the meaning of this?" Adeyemi asked, startled. The old woman turned to the guards. "Summon the king." Moments later, the king arrived, his face dark with concern. "What is happening here?" Iya Aduke pointed at the food. "Your Majesty, the queen poisoned this meal." Stifled screams filled the air. The queen's face twisted in shock. "How dare you accuse me of such wickedness?" "Then prove your innocence," Iya Aduke challenged. "Eat the food yourself." A heavy silence settled in the room. The queen's hands trembled. She collapsed to her knees, tears spilling down her cheeks. I did it, she confessed. "But why?" the king roared. Olufunke's face contorted with pain. Because he looks just like my father, the man who ruined my life." "When I was a little girl," she continued, "my father would sneak into my room every night and forcefully sleep with me. All my cries and pleas for him to stop the inhumane act on his own daughter fell on deaf ears. Instead, he threatened to kill me if I ever revealed what he did to me to anyone. I suffered in silence and was relieved when the king married me. You all know how I longed to have a son. I was overjoyed when Adeyemi was born. But when I saw that he bore a striking resemblance of my father, my bitter past flashed before me, hence fostering the hatred I have for him." Adeyemi's heart shattered. He had suffered not for his own sins, but for another man's cruelty. And now, the truth was finally out. The air in the dining room was thick with tension. The queen, once the epitome of grace and poise, was now a weeping shadow of herself, her secret unraveling before the entire court. King Adeyemi's fury was like a storm. "You tried to kill our son because he looks like your father?" His voice shook with disbelief. Olufunke bowed her head, shame swallowing her whole. You do not understand, she whispered. I thought I was free of him. But the day Adeyemi was born and I looked into his eyes, I saw my father staring back at me. Her sobs filled the hall, but they did nothing to soften the rage of the king. Adeyemi, silent all this time, felt his heart ache. He had been cursed from birth, but not by the gods, but by the sins of a man he never knew. He was the innocent bearer of his mother's deepest wounds. Mother! His voice was barely above a whisper. I did nothing to deserve this. Olufunke looked up at her son, and for the first time, she saw him, not the ghost of her tormentor, but a boy who had only ever craved her love. But it was too late. Kábíyèsí, Ìyá Aduke said solemnly, the queen has committed a grave crime. The law is clear. She must be banished from the palace. The weight of the decision crushed the king, but he knew what must be done. Take her away, he commanded, his voice laced with sorrow. As the guards led Olufunke away, she turned to Adeyemi, tears streaming down her face. I am sorry, she whispered. But apologies could not undo the years of pain. The palace was never the same after the queen's banishment. Though Adeyemi had been spared, the scars of his mother's hatred remained. He no longer laughed as freely, no longer ran through the palace halls with the joy he once carried. His sisters, though kind, could not fill the void left by the absence of a mother's love. You should be happy, my prince, Iya Aduke told him one evening as she tended to him. The queen can no longer harm you. But I never wanted her gone, Adeyemi murmured. I only wanted her to love me. Though the palace celebrated his survival, the weight of his mother's betrayal stayed with him. And in the solitude of his room, he began to wonder, was there a way to heal what had been broken? Months passed, and the kingdom moved on, but Adeyemi could not. One evening, he approached his father. Baba, I wish to speak with you. The king, who had grown weary from the sorrow of his wife's betrayal, looked at his son. What is it, my child? Adeyemi hesitated, then spoke the words that had been haunting him. Bring my mother back. The king's face darkened. After all she did to you? Adeyemi nodded. She suffered too, Baba. She was broken long before I was born. The king clenched his jaw. She tried to take your life. I know, Adeyemi said, voice steady. But hate cannot cure hate. Silence stretched between them. Then, with a heavy sigh, the king turned away. I will consider it. For the first time in years, hope flickered in Adeyemi's heart. Weeks passed before the king made his decision. One fateful morning, Olufunke was brought back to the palace. She stood before the throne, humbled and broken. Her garments were no longer the lavish robes of a queen, but the simple cloth of an exile. Adeyemi, the king, said, "It is your mercy that has given her a second chance. It is your forgiveness that has saved her." The queen turned to her son, her eyes brimming with emotion. "I do not deserve this kindness." Adeyemi stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "But you need it, mother." And for the first time in his life, his mother held him, not out of duty, not out of fear, but out of love. Olufunke worked hard to repair what she had shattered. She spent time with Adeyemi, learning his laughter, his kindness, his soul. And the more she knew him, the more she saw that he was not her father. He was something far greater. He was the son she had always wanted. One afternoon, as they walked through the palace gardens, she stopped and turned to him. "My son, your grandfather was a cruel man, but you are not him. You never were." For the first time, Adeyemi saw the pain in her eyes, and for the first time, Olufunke saw the forgiveness in his. Healing had begun. Years later, King Adeyemi passed the crown to his son, making Adeyemi the new ruler of the land. He ruled with wisdom, kindness, and justice, never allowing the ghosts of the past to define him. His mother, once his greatest tormentor, became his greatest supporter. She stood by his side, not just as a queen, but as a mother who had finally learned to love. And so, the kingdom flourished under the reign of a boy who had once been hated, but had chosen against all odds to forgive. For in the end, it was not hatred that shaped his destiny, but love. The moral of this story is that pain and trauma, if left unhealed, can turn love into hatred and cause harm to the innocent. However, forgiveness has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. Adeyemi chose to forgive despite his suffering, and in the end, love triumphed over bitterness. The story teaches us that while we cannot change the past, we can choose how it shapes our future. Did you enjoy this beautiful story? Please subscribe to our channel if you're yet to do so. Also, kindly drop your comments, like and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Until I come your way next time, remain blessed.